So folks, welcome to Sumo Logic's Kubernetes training. My name is John Meredith. I will be your instructor and I am based on the US East Coast. So for me, the sun is going down and I've turned some lights on here so things look a little as they look, whatever. But this is my home office. And again, this is one of my kids' rooms that, the kids are, my daughters I've got twin daughters that will turn 40 here very, very soon. So actually at the end of the year. So nothing makes you feel old like your kids' birthdays, but that's another story. Anyway, when they leave the house, you can take over the rooms and you can make it an office. So there you go. Anyway, I am been with Sumo a little over 2 years, and I've worked in various roles in IT and including IT manager, DBA, programmer, network admin, stuff like that. And again, for somebody who was down in San Diego, like I said, I spent a lot of time, or I'm sorry, somebody out in Oahu, Ohio, spent a lot of time, 20 years in the Navy, retired out of the Navy. And so again, all that fun stuff. Anyway, I'm assisted here by Odell. And so Odell, you want to say hi, sir?
Good evening and welcome. I'm calling in from the Midwest. And sun isn't going down just yet, but we got a bunch of wind here. So hopefully you're somewhere where it's nice and less windy. John has a plethora of information for you. So again, reach out, ask questions. We're here to help you. Good luck. Enjoy.
Okay. And as Odell said, I'm going to echo the sentiment. If you got questions, please let us know. Okay. Help us help you. Okay. Our focus today is this Kubernetes class. And again, it's one of our many certifications that we have. And so let's talk about how Sumo Logic works with Kubernetes. Our agenda, we're going to talk about some Kubernetes basic concepts. What is Kubernetes? What's a pod? What's a container? Things like that. Then we're going to do a series of hands-on labs that I've actually got a document for you that I'm going to provide for you that you can access. Now, I'm actually going to provide you two documents. So here in the chat box, I am going to send to everyone from my computer the lab guide, and it's going to be in PDF. So it's uploading right now. And here's the deal. Some of you probably work for a company that doesn't allow you to grab files off of Zoom. And if that's the case, I would like you to reach out to Odell, or you can send it to host and presenters and let Odell know your email address so he can send you the document. We'll email it to you. But most of you hopefully can click on it, download it, and open it and see it and have a good time. That's going to be our lab guide. All right. The other thing is that when you take the exam, our exams are open book, open notes, open documentation. And so we want to provide you a copy of the slides. Normally it would be posted out in our area. I'll show you where that posting is, but for whatever reason, our slides aren't out there right now. So again, I have also uploaded this. So again, if you need this emailed to you because you can't grab it from the chat box, please feel free to reach out to Odell and provide him your email address. Okay. I promise you we won't put your email address on that mailing list or a mailing list or anything. So we're going to do a series of labs, like I said, playing with Kubernetes, playing with the metadata, looking at the built-in apps that we have, and looking at the pre-built dashboards. We're also going to build a new dashboard. So those of you about, 8 months ago, maybe 6 months ago, we came out with this new dashboard concept. And so we're going to play and build out a new dashboard. And I think you'll agree with me that this is a vast improvement to the classic or legacy dashboards that we call them. And then we'll talk also about how we can use Kubernetes and set up monitors in Kubernetes. So again, this lecture lab and all that stuff is going to take us about 2 hours. And then after that, we'll have an hour to get certified. So we'll be here with you. And again, if you get stuck on a question while you get certified, feel free to reach out to myself or Odell. Just open up your mic and ask your question directly, or you can type in the chat box, and we'll gladly try to help you because we want you to be successful. We want you to pass the exam. We want you to move forward. All right. Can I see actually, before I do that, here we go. Again, if you also take the exam today and you do get certified, there is this form that we will provide you when you take the exam, 3 hours or 2 hours, whatever, that you can fill out, and you can get a $15 Uber Eats voucher. Again, if you were with us yesterday or the day before, you know about this offer. And you can even combine your, if you didn't do what you took the exam yesterday and you passed and you forgot to fill out the form, you can do that today as well. Okay. So you can actually add both of them on the, you can add both all the tests that you passed on the same form. So you can submit one form. Now, one little thing, an accounting rule that we have inside of Sumo that says we can only send you 2 Uber Eats vouchers per day. It's an accounting rule. So for example, you passed all 3 exams, you were with us Tuesday and Wednesday, and you're here tonight and you pass all 3 exams and you're like, I filled out the form once, I won all 3 vouchers. That's great. We'll send you 2 vouchers tomorrow and we'll send you another one on that next workday. Okay, just want you to be aware of it. All right. So I see some chats flying here with email addresses and stuff like that. Our extension in Kubernetes, like most things, we have a bunch of pre-built dashboards that you can use. We've got a pre-built Explorer that you can use. We've got a pre-built apps you can use, all kinds of stuff to make your exploration, your need of exploration into Kubernetes very powerful, very quick, very effective. Okay, that's my message. And in this class, we're going to explore those pre-built dashboards. We're going to explore those built-in applications. We're going to explore all that stuff to see what's going on. Also, in the process, we're also going to build and create and customize your own dashboard. And we'll show you what this new dashboard interface looks like. I say new a little tongue-in-cheek because we've had it now for probably about, I said, six or 8 months. I don't know, somewhere around there, maybe close to a year. Time flies when you're having fun. So anyway. And then, of course, we'll also do a little exercise here. We'll investigate and show you how we can use Sumo Logic to investigate and troubleshoot a crashed pod. Okay, and I'll talk about that when we get there. A little caveat there. And finally, we're going to create an alert. We're going to go in here and create an alert. The slides could use a little updating here, but we'll actually create an alert. So that's going to be our game plan. Most of it's going to be hands-on labs. And so again, as we're going through this stuff, if you've got questions, feel free to ask. But I'm going to start with a question for you all, right? Typically in the world of the cloud and the web and all that fun stuff, right? We're used to, at least when I grew up in the IT world, right? You had a monolithic architecture, right? You had databases and you had applications that ran on those databases, and then you had some user interface that dealt with that. And typically your servers were standalone, right? I had a database server that I managed. I had an email server that I managed, which also is a database, but don't get me started. I had an authentication server. So I had all these little separate servers. And these servers serviced a monolithic environment, right? Logging people in, sending, receiving email, database type stuff. In today's world, we typically have things running in the cloud. And so now you've got these different systems with these different microservices connected to these different databases. And it's really, quite frankly, a challenge to see across your environments to see what's happening. It's also a bit of a challenge if you want to make a change to these environments. And that's where Kubernetes comes in. So with Kubernetes, we can make changes to our environment. We can manage that environment. We can do all kinds of neat things with that environment. And obviously, if we've got that sort of power and that sort of capability and that sort of tool, we want to monitor it and see what's going on. We need to get an idea of how our Kubernetes environment is behaving. Now, would somebody please explain to me what Kubernetes is? It doesn't have to be complicated. Just explain to me what Kubernetes is and what value it does for me as a company. Go ahead, David. Unmute your mic. Ask your, go ahead.
Yes, it's a system that let us deploy and present containerized applications in a standard way.
Okay, good.
It's a container management.
Okay, right.
Software.
It is a container management system. It does manage our environments. It manages our systems. That's correct as well. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. The reason I asked the question is, again, to get a baseline, just so we can understand. Let's say that I'm a large enterprise company, right? And let's say that I'm a huge enterprise company. I'm a major airline, right? Pick your major airline. And I have people that want to book travel, book tickets and all that fun stuff, right? Well, the question is, how many servers do I need? Do I need 10 servers? Do I need 20 servers? If I run a special promotion, I'll bet you I'll see a spike, and however many servers I have, it's not going to be enough, right? So I want some system that automatically scales up and scales out for me. And as my CPU starts getting taxed and stuff like that in my environments, it starts spawning up some more systems. And then when those systems have been idle for a while, whatever you set in your Kubernetes environment, then those systems can then go away. So this Kubernetes environment allows us to grow our environment, shrink our environments. It also allows us to be able to deploy new patches and new changes and new things to our environment. So that's what Kubernetes is. As you say here, it's a container orchestration system. It is open source and supported by the Kubernetes Foundation. It was actually started by Google once upon a time as a project. And like I said, it controls these things we call containers. Containers are your environment, all the environment servers and stuff that you have and all that. Sometimes people refer to Kubernetes by the abbreviation K8. And again, the reason that we do that is these lovely letters are 8 characters. And so they've decided to nickname it K8 for the 8 characters. K8 or Kubernetes basically relates to the same thing. Now, what does a Kubernetes environment look like? Well, typically it's got this big old thing called the cluster. And your cluster is your entire Kubernetes environment. Okay. And when I look at a cluster or I look at an environment, I can look at things maybe by service, or maybe by deployment, or maybe by namespace. So we can organize this a lot of different ways. We can look at it by its physical structure. We can look at it by its logical structure. We can look at it by its services structure. And so we're going to use Sumo Logic to take advantage of that. Okay. Now in this cluster, we're going to have a master node. That master node manages all the worker nodes. So I'm going to have a master node, and I'm going to have at least one worker node. That worker node is going to do my bidding, do my things, take my airline reservations, whatever. And again, I may have more than one worker node, and I have the ability to spawn up more worker nodes or collapse more worker nodes. Now in these nodes, I also then have these things called pods. So I've got these various pods, which is a subset of my worker node, my nodes. And then I also have containers. So again, cluster, my entire organization, my group of resources and stuff like that. Again, in providing efficiency and fault tolerance. And that is something I forgot to mention. If one of my machines goes down, if I have, an outage, or whatever, another environment will then jump up and take over. And so this is a self-recovering environment as we need to. So there's clusters, like I said, then there's you got your nodes. Your master node, a cluster will have one and only one master node. The master node manages the worker nodes. The worker nodes runs the software, does the work, stores the data, whatever my applications and stuff are all about are managed by that worker node.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So a cluster has is made up of multiple, I guess, machines. And are those machines physical or virtual or both?
Okay. They are probably stored someplace, but in the cloud, I don't know about you, but I don't know specifically where my physical cloud machines are. I believe they're somewhere in Virginia, North Virginia, but I don't know physically where they are. So I tend to think of them as a kind of a logical unit, but they're physically got to be somewhere. So does that help answer your question?
Yeah, I'm just thinking like when you have a Kubernetes cluster, let's say in AWS or something,
Yep,
right?
Yep, exactly.
That's made up of multiple probably EC2 instances, right? So those will be virtual machines.
Yep, correct. Absolutely
Yeah.
true.
Okay.
And the other thing, if you're doing it right, you probably want to have some fault tolerance outside of your region. So you might stand up a environment, a node and stuff on the US East Coast and maybe one on the US West Coast. You would probably want that for fault tolerance if you're a US based company. If you're an international company, you may want to have those environments across the world. So the question is, they're going to reside someplace. And because when we think of things, at least I think of things now, it's about the cloud. And the question is, where does that stuff in the cloud physically reside? Where is that data farm? Is it in is it in Virginia? Is it in, Chicago? Where exactly is that environment? So does that answer your question, man?
Yeah. So basically, the machines can be physical machines as
Mhm.
well as, or it can be virtual machines.
Right. Absolutely. And they gotta, it's gotta be physical somewhere. Okay. So again, my nodes, I got master node, I got worker nodes. Again, the worker nodes do all my work for me. The master node manages the worker nodes. Pretty simple. Then I've got pods, and these are the smallest amount of unit that the Kubernetes can manage. So they manage these pods. So these blue circles here are my pods. In these pods, I have containers or microservices that basically do something, right? Each of these runs some sort of a single microservice. So my containers, like I said, are the package of code or the microservice that we're running, and they are part of a pod, and the pod is the smallest unit that Kubernetes can orchestrate. By the way, the reason I shared with you slides, you can imagine there are some lovely questions that come out of these slides. And so we want to make it very easy for you to pass. Okay. All right. So now that we understand a little bit about Kubernetes, let's take a look at data collection and metadata and all that stuff, right? Metadata, as I hope you all are aware, is an industry term. It's not a Sumo Logic term. It means information about your data. Every system that I know of, that I can think of, that I touch, has some sort of metadata about it, right? Information about my data. And in Sumo Logic, when we create and bring data in from a Kubernetes environment, not only can we bring in that data, but we can also create things like key value pairs. Maybe I want to have a key that says business unit, right? What is this business unit that's paying for this environment? Business unit equals finance. Business unit equals my HR team. Business unit, whatever. You can add key value pairs into your metadata into Sumo Logic so we can search for them. We can search, of course, by source categories. We can search by other fields. Again, thinking about how you want to structure this, metadata design will save you time and money. So hopefully that's an obvious, and it makes sense, and it's consistent with what you've heard over the last few days. Now, as far as using metadata, real simple. I can go in here and I can access my environment. And you'll see in just a few minutes, we're going to do some labs, and we'll see exactly what kind of things we can look at with our metadata. This particular metadata tab is _ source category. You're familiar with it. I can also look at some other metadata tags like key value pairs, like namespace or pod or container, and I can look at it that way. Now, this slide has a bunch of questions. All right, so here we are, Sumo Logic. We're over here on the right. On the left, you've got a Kubernetes environment. All right, and then in here, we use Helm, the Kubernetes Helm standard, to collect and manage the data. So what happens? Your Kubernetes environment generates logs, right? If it's on an AWS environment, as you pointed out earlier, might be a bunch of S3 logs, right? Maybe I want to talk about the how folks log in. That's under security. I want to capture some metrics. And of course, because it's a Kubernetes environment, I also want to capture some events. I needed to spawn off another system. I needed to reduce my system. I want to capture those events. So in the Helm standard, what happens is for those logs, we use FluentBit. And I'm here to tell you, you're going to see a test question that says match the following Kubernetes service with the various Helm service that collects it. So logs is FluentBit. Events is FluentD. Metrics is Prometheus. And then your security is Falco Plus. So these are the collection mechanisms we use to take our log data, our event data, our metric data, and our security data and bring it into Sumo Logic. Now, we can also do some really cool things, right? When you build out your structure of your Kubernetes, you might have tags like, hey, here's my namespace, or here's my deployment, or here's the service that this is going to do, or this is the container. So we can add to here key value pairs where my key might be pod or node or container. And then my value might be pod equals fluent D and some GUID number. Pod equals fluent D and a different GUID number, all my different little pods. Maybe my deployment, production, deployment equals development, deployment equals whatever I want it to be. So we can use these key value pairs, and when we ingest this information into Sumo Logic, we can make these key value pairs searchable in Sumo Logic, making it very easy for you and I to see what's going on. Now, so Prometheus is what we use for the metrics here, okay? And again, we can also use custom key value pairs to add some additional information about that metadata and that metric data that we want. So we can do some enrichment there. And so let's talk about these hands-on labs. First thing I'd like you to do is I'd like you to fire up your browser, your Google Chrome or your Firefox browser, and I'd like you to go to service.sumologic.com. That's service.sumologic.com. And then if you don't mind, when you go to service.sumologic.com, I would like you to pick a 3-digit number, any 3-digit number that you want, and I'd like you to type it in the chat box. Most of you have been with us last couple of days, so you probably had a number that you used yesterday or the day before. Fine, use whatever number that you want, okay? I'm going to use one that you're probably not going to use. I'm going to use 603. Now you may ask, what's so big about 603? Nothing much. It just happens to be the area code of the state of New Hampshire where I live. So we are in the 603 area code out here. And so I'm going to use 603. So you're going to log in with an email address of Training Plus Analyst with that 3-digit number that you've selected at sumologic.com. And then the password is capital S, PRING, numeral 2, exclamation mark. Or if I show it to you here, it's spring 22, exclamation mark. And if you've been with us before, you know this password changes every month. The first Monday of the month, but it changes every month. So good news is we just changed it about a week or so ago. So you're good for a few more weeks. You should be able to click sign in. And you should be able to access this environment. If it opened up some previous tabs from the previous user, as you all probably know, because I know Adele's an outstanding trainer, he showed you that you can click on these 3 vertical dots and you can say, I want to close all tabs, and boom, the tabs are closed. Is this cool or what, huh? Odell, thank you for putting this information in the chat box. So what I'd like you to do is when you get logged in, I'd like you to go ahead in the participants window and raise your hand. I want you to raise your hand. That way I know that you're in. All right, so I've got 6 of you so far who have raised your hand. Now, more importantly, if you're having problems logging in, let me or Odell know so we can help you out. We don't want to leave anybody behind here. We don't want to leave anybody behind. So 7 of 13 are in. Now, I'm, an experienced trainer. I've been doing this for a long time. So I realize that getting 100% participation is probably not very realistic, okay? Some of you got distracted by the day job. Some of you just want to watch. Some of you, I understand. I get it, okay? So, but I would encourage you, if you want to play, please play. More importantly, if you're not able to log in, if you're having problems logging in, let me or Odell know. Unmute your mic, let us know, put something in the chat box. But I'm going to go ahead and move forward here. Okay. All right, let me lower the hands. And let's go ahead. And now that we're logged in, let's take a moment here. And basically what I'm going to do here is I'm going to walk through the labs. Tell you what, I'm just going to go ahead and open up the lab document. Now, I have opened up this document, the student lab guide. And again, I posted it up earlier in the chat box. So if I need to post it up again, and I suspect I do, that's the slides. I'll get to that in a second. Here's the lab guide. I'm sending it up again in case any of you joined late. And again, if you joined late, here is my name and my email address. So if you've got questions or anything we can do to help you out, let us know, okay? All right, so I want to go into that lab guide, and here's that lab guide. And so I go down to page 2 here, and at lab 0, log into the training environment. Oh, gee, they want us to go to service.sumologic.com, choose a number between 001 and 800. Great, whatever. And we're going to log in as Training Plus analyst with that 3-digit number at Sumo Logic. You've already done this. This is done, okay? So that's an easy. The next thing we want to do is we want to identify a source category metadata tag, right? So I'm going to do this a little differently. I'm going to switch the order of these two things on page 5, because normally what we've taught you in the past is you want to see what your collectors are, right? You can go in here to manage data. You can go in here to collection. And here in collection, you can search for the type of data that you're interested in. I'm going to filter and search for the word cube, K-U-B-E. And if I look for kube, I see that there's all kinds of interesting things, okay? And since I've limited myself to 10 collectors, I may not see the one I'm looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up to say 30 collectors, okay? And if I want to, here where it says expand, I can click on none. So it collapses them all down. And then I can scroll down here, and the one I'm looking for, it's always the case, it's the bottom one. It's prod01 travellogic.info.com here or whatever. So here I can see my Kubernetes. In my Kubernetes here, I can see in this collector, which is on a cloud-based environment, what am I bringing in? I'm bringing in my default metrics. I'm bringing in my API server metrics, my control plane metrics. Again, we have you'll find that the Kubernetes, that master node is referred to as the control plane. So I can see how it's doing. Here's my events. Here's my kube controller management metrics. And I can see all the different metrics that I want. And many of you know from a previous class that if you go into any one of these, you can click on this and it will open it up in a log search, and you can immediately see your data. Now, of course, I'm going after an environment here that doesn't have any data. Prod01 doesn't really have any data anymore. So that's why you're not going to see any data. But this is a Kubernetes environment, and I could ingest data from it. These are other environments dealing with Kubernetes and Kubernetes labs that you and I can see and play and all that good stuff. So as I said, the first thing we typically do is we look at our collectors, right? Second thing we can do is we can go in here and we create a log search, and we can see our data by creating a log query. And of course, the metadata tag we use is, what metadata tag have you guys used mostly in the last couple of days? What's our favorite metadata tag here at Sumo Logic?
Source category.
Source category. There you go. I'll take source category for $100. Ding, 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 ding. And I want to see anything related. I'm going to say star, K-U-B-E, star. And that's going to say anything that starts with the word cube and ends with anything. I don't care. I want to see it. And so now when I run this, and of course, because I've logged in as this user, it's going to give me help that I really don't need. So I'm going to close that up. But now here I can see my log messages. And here in my log messages, I can say, okay, I've got a timeout flush, or I've got, various other things here. I can see this is part of a JSON log. And I can see where these are coming from in my categories here if I want to. So there's some Fluent D information coming in here. There are some kubelet information coming in here. All kinds of different log types. And so I can start seeing that kind of information to see what's going on, right? And I can, of course, examine it. Everything you learned in class, for example, I'm sure that Odell taught you about log reduce, and we can click on log reduce and combine these into like messages or whatever we want. The field browsers and how I can use the field browsers to look for, maybe I want to see what clusters I have, right? You all know I can click on the word cluster and it shows me the various clusters that I have here of the various data. And if I want to filter for a specific cluster, right, I could click on that particular cluster. It adds it into my query. And now I'm filtering for just that information. So again, everything you've learned to now still has value. We're just building on it. So that is basically here lab 1, where we went out and grabbed the new log search and we looked for source category of star, cube, star. And then part of also lab 1 here, we did a managed data collection and we looked for our prod 01. Once we type in cube here, right? This should actually be in bold. I'm sorry, this is on me. Should have made that bold, okay? So we can see where the information is. And that pretty much takes care of lab 1. Any questions? All right. Then another way that we can search data here if we want, I mentioned, of course, our big old metadata tag, right? Source category. Well, with key value pairs, we can do something like this. I want to search by namespace, and it helps if you spell it correctly, where namespace equals, and in per lab 2 here, namespace equals Sumo Logic. So if I type in namespace equals Sumo Logic, I have key value pairs here, and I can see I've got over 6,000 results that's showing me information here about my, again, different Kubernetes things. Here's my category. Here's now some Falco, some security information, some FluentD information, and so forth and so on. And as I know Odell has taught you, you can take one of these areas of interest, and if you want to look at the messages immediately preceding or after it for a period of time, you can click on that link and you can see and examine this even further. So if there's a message, an error message here or something that catches your eye, you can use this to help troubleshoot. All right, some pretty powerful stuff there. They might, yes, that's true. Some of you may have taken the classes the last 2 days. Some of you may not have. So it's, you know, if I apologize if I'm assuming too much knowledge here, okay? But I do try to tie things together from our other classes. So if you have had a fundamentals class before, if you've had our search mastery class before, hopefully you've seen these things. But in lab 2, basically I can look for things, right? I can write a log query, a search for things. Where did this namespace equals Sumo Logic come from? Well, that's really simple. If I go back to my environment here, when you and I set up a source, particularly a Kubernetes source, right? I'm going to go out here and grab this one right here. When we set up a source, we can, if I edit this source, if I can edit this, oh, I see. Because I'm logged in as an analyst, I don't have rights to edit the source. But if I did, or more importantly, I'll tell you what, let me do this. Just humor me for a second while I ad hoc a lab, okay? I'm gonna log in with my credentials, which means I have full administrative rights. There we go. And if I go in here to manage data, and if I go into collection, and if I search for cube, K-U-B-E, and if I collapse all these lovely little rascals here and find one that I like, I'm going to grab Josh's here. Under events, under edit, when we set up a source, we can add in here additional key value pairs. So namespace equals and all that stuff, that we could have injected that here. It could also be part of the normal injection process, normal Helm process that we take advantage of. So that's how that stuff happens. That's how that miracle occurs. When we set up things through Helm, it automatically adds a lot of those tags, but you can additionally add others if you want to, okay? So I apologize for that degradation, that change there, but I thought I'd kind of show you how things kind of connect together here. All right. All right. Now, besides using the power of the logs and all that stuff, we've got some built-in applications that we can use. So here in lab 3, we want to perhaps install a Kubernetes app. How many Kubernetes apps do we have? Well, we've got a few, okay? So if I go into my app catalog, or if you go into an app catalog and you just start searching for Kubernetes, or better yet, go down here and select Kubernetes, you can see there's all kinds of Kubernetes apps, right? If you're running on Azure, there's the Azure Kubernetes control plane. Now, something important to point out, there's control plane and then there's the regular app. The master control plane, and let me show you the slide here. We got to find it first. There we go. So let me go back here a slide or two. Okay. Again, Kubernetes has a master node and has worker nodes. So you and I can install the Kubernetes app and see those worker nodes. The Kubernetes app will show you the worker nodes. It will not show you the master nodes. The master nodes are from the control plane apps. So if you're running in the Amazon environment, you can install the Amazon EKS control plane. If you're on Azure, if you're on good old AWS, there's the Kubernetes control plane that you can use. Additionally, if you're in DevOps, or you're doing continuous improvement, continuous development applications like Circle CI, Icito, and Spinnaker, and stuff like that, we have built-in apps for those. Security apps, here's some of the security apps that we have. So again, you can get information about how people are logging in, managing things, all that. So like I said, we've got a bunch of apps here that you can use, a bunch of Kubernetes types apps. Now, if I were to go out here to my app catalog, and in my app catalog, like I said, if I were just to search for Kubernetes, KUB, okay, again, here's my Kubernetes app. And then here's my Kubernetes control plane app. The control plane app, again, lets me see the master node. These let me see all the worker nodes. If I click on this app and I go to install it, and I click on install, it asks me for my Falco log, it asks me for my event log. And what you're going to do, per the directions of the lab, you're going to enter for Falco, Falco star, and for events, event star. So back to here, I'm going to add this Kubernetes app. I'm going to append my initials to it, and we recommend you do that as well. I'm also going to add today's date to this. Why today's date? Because I just did this yesterday to test this out, okay? So I'm going to add today's date so I can make sure it's a unique name. Again, here in my Falco log data, I'm going to type in star, Falco, star. That's a star, John. There we go, the other star. For my events, star, events, star. Now, again, I don't know what you called your various things, your source categories and all that, but if you called them something different, you can do that. Basically, I'm saying anything starts before a word event, and anything that happens after that word event. These stars are wildcards. And as we all know, if I install it by default, it's going to put it in my personal folder. Hopefully you know that. So I can then click add to library, and it will now add this to my personal library. And again, if you were with us either in the fundamentals or some of the other classes, you know that I can, you can, we can go in here to this lovely Kubernetes app, and I can share it with others. So people can see this Kubernetes app. Now, what's in this Kubernetes app, you ask? Well, I've got all kinds of stuff, right? I got HPA, I got namespace, node overview, service, stats, all kinds of stuff, right? So where does one begin? Let's start with the Kubernetes nodes, the physical nodes. So if I click on Kubernetes nodes overview, and I get this lovely, because I'm a new user, it's trying to help me. I don't need that help. Thank you. I'm going to close that up. So here in my Kubernetes node overview, I can see how many nodes I have, the average CPU, any critical errors or critical problems, my total number of nodes as far as CPU, as far as memory and allocatable and all that fun stuff. So I'm anywhere close to things. I can see a pretty good insight into my nodes, and I didn't have to write one query. All I had to do was install this application. Maybe I'm curious about my pod health. I'll click on Kubernetes pod. And here I can see across my cluster, across my namespace, across my pods, as soon as it loads, I can see what containers are running. I can see my pod ready states, how many pods I got running here. I can see I've got some pods in crash loopback. We'll talk about that later. And I can see my pod logs here if I want. And by the way, up here, I can also change this. So I can specify, gee, I want to see a particular cluster. And if I get rid of that star, hopefully here in a minute, it will resolve and show me all my different clusters that I can choose from. Obviously, I've got a few clusters there. It's taken a little bit of time to resolve my little wavy lines there. But if I know what my cluster name is, I could, of course, type it in. Let me see how namespace, see if namespace behaves any better here. Forgive me, I haven't ran this part of it for a while, so. Okay. Tell you what, bottom line here is I can go ahead and look at aspects of my Kubernetes environment. I can see from a security perspective, I mean, users getting logged out, security issues, things along those lines. What kind of security issues am I having? Are they elevating their privileges and all that fun stuff? All kinds of built-in stuff that you and I can take advantage of. We could also, if we want to, go into our app catalog. Again, we can install the control plane app and grab that master node information. So out of the box, just with Sumo, you've got a lot of visibility into your Kubernetes environment. And that's simply what we're trying to show you here in Lab 3. You can install some apps. Any questions so far? All right. In Lab 4, we can also preview some pre-configured dashboards, right? So actually, I did this already. I went into my new app here, right? And in my folder here, and I went into that Kubernetes folder and I previewed various applications here. So I'm sorry here. Let's go out to this environment. Okay, this is where I'm logged in as 603. And again, I can see basically what's going on. If I want to, I can filter it for a specific cluster. There we go. Now it's playing nice. So I can sit and say, I want to see my coffee bar training cluster, or I want to see my SE demo cluster. So I can switch what clusters and stuff I want to see. Now, of course, if I'm looking at containers, I can look at that by cluster, by namespace, by pod, by container. So I can sit and pick and choose what things I might want to see. And this may take a while to resolve. So let me forget that for right now. The other thing you can do is you can link these dashboards together, and you'll find out a little later that you can click on something here and have it take you to another dashboard if you want to. So something to look forward to here. Okay. Additionally, in these dashboards or in these panels, when I click on them, I can also see the metrics that make up this particular dashboard. So there I've got the crash back loop of 29. Right now, the value is 29, but you can see it was much higher before. So I can see how it's trending. And then here under entities, great example. Normally in my entities, I could then have it launch and connect to other things. And you'll see that not so much in our dashboards, but in our Explorer, which is coming up in just a few minutes. All right. So what questions have you? Okay. Okay. Ursha asked a really good question. Ursha, and I hope I pronounced that correctly, Ursha. If I didn't, feel free to correct me. But Ursha asked a good question. Why don't I see collectors under managed data in your company account? So when she goes or he goes into managed data, they don't see collection in here. They don't see it. It's a privilege. It's a right that you can either have or not have. You have the ability to view collectors or not view collectors. You have the ability to manage collectors or not manage collectors. So whoever set up your environment, whatever, put you in a role that doesn't have the ability to view collectors. And that's why you don't see it. And if you don't see some of the functionality, for example, here in my account, I see all kinds of administration stuff. Me logged in as John Meredith. But when I look at the 603 and I go into administration, I don't see that stuff. So again, it's a privilege thing. It's a right privilege type thing. So great question. And I hope that answers it. Any other questions while we're here at this breaking point here, this point? We're not in a break just yet. Give you a break in about 12 minutes. Any other questions? All right. Feel free to keep those questions coming, folks. All right, Lab 5. We can also use a built-in Explorer in Sumo Logic. So when you set up an environment, a Kubernetes environment or whatever, you will find that, let me close up all these tabs, by the way, just to housekeep here, that you and I can click on this Explorer button, or we can click on this new Explorer button, and that opens this thing called an Explorer. Now, if you happen to set up an AWS environment in our product, you'll see that you can look at your AWS environment across your AWS environment, your various, production environments, your various regions, your various things, and you can see across your AWS environment. Well, we can do the same sort of thing with Kubernetes, okay? So here in Kubernetes, I can look by my physical node view. So I can click on Kubernetes node view, and then I can see my various clusters underneath that. And under those clusters, I can open them up, and then I see my nodes. So under clusters, I see nodes, my different systems, my different host systems. And then underneath those, I can see my pods. And as you may recall from our conversation earlier, underneath pods, we have containers. That's the individual microservice. But the pod is the lowest service that, again, Kubernetes can manage. Okay. So I can see this by my node view. So it goes from my cluster to my node. Or I can do it by namespace view. So here, when I open it up, it goes from my cluster to my various namespaces. And then from my various namespaces, I can go into my various pods. And again, under my pods, we have our containers. And we have dashboards here all along the way to help us. So if I were to follow instructions, and I'm a full-fledged person here in the male persuasion, so I don't follow directions very well. But if I were to go into my Kubernetes node view and I expand prod 01, so let's do that. Let's actually tell you what, let me close this one down, okay, just to save flipping back and forth. So again, I want to go into Kubernetes node view. By the way, while I'm thinking about it, let me also point this out. I can also see by deployment, my prod, my whatever, or I can see it by service. I can break it down by service if I want to, the various services that are running, okay? But I'm going to go to Kubernetes node view. I'm going to expand prod 1. And again, I can see my various nodes. I can click on one of those nodes and see what the status is of that node. It is green. That's a good thing, right? Makes me happy that it's green. I can see my CPU utilization. It looks in the green. Memory utilization looks in the green. Got node data for usage. That's an interesting little thing there. Maybe it's being used someplace else, and I can see some nice information here. But also, ladies and gentlemen, if you go up here to dashboards, you can look at various other things. So here within this node, I can look at my overall nodes if I want to, or I can look at my general overview of the health of my node. Inside of a pod, again, I've got other dashboards here that I can use to kind of see what's going on. And of course, inside of a container, again, I've got dashboards here that you and I can use to see what's happening. Now, you may say to yourself, well, gee, this container isn't showing any data. It's probably not the active container right now. This container is idle. It's waiting to be started. It's not needed right now. So sometimes when you look in our training environment, you're going to see a lot of things that aren't necessarily going to be displaying data. Doesn't mean that there's a problem. It simply means that there's that particular node or that particular pod is not online yet for whatever reason. And of course, everything I'm selecting is online. So, but you get the idea. I hope you get the idea. Okay. So some of these nodes may not be online at this time. Okay. So if you run across that, don't panic. They're just not online right now. Taking a break. Okay. But I can go into, say, dashboards, Kubernetes containers. So again, if I go into again, I'm in my node view. I'm looking at my various nodes. If I open up a node, and if I go into in my node a particular pod, I'll look at my security pod. And if I click on my container, I can see information about the performance of that specific container. CPU utilization, how much memory is it using, percentage of memory. It's getting a little high there, maybe something I want to concern myself with. And I can also see my container logs, a dashboard showing me my container logs. Or I can also see a dashboard showing me the state of all of my containers in this particular node. So there's lots of little sub dashboards here that you and I can look at to see what's going on. And this Explorer is built into our product. So if you've got a Kubernetes environment that you bring in here, this Explorer area should automatically populate. You should be able to search by node view, surface view, deployment view, or namespace view and see what's going on. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the purpose of Lab 5. As I mentioned, on page 11 here at the very bottom, it says, help, there's no data. If you selected something that's not running right now, it may not have data. Don't panic, just find something that does have data. Because again, this is a Kubernetes environment. Some nodes may be active, some nodes may be passive. They may be shut down, they may be waiting. So again, just be careful. And so that basically is that. Any questions, ladies and gentlemen, so far? Any questions? All right. And I'll tell you what, I propose that we take a break. And I propose that we take a 10-minute break. So when this timer gets down to 0, I'd like y'all back here. And then we'll talk about building dashboards. We'll talk about troubleshooting a node and creating alerts. And we'll wrap things up. Get you ready to take your exam. So see you back here in about 9 minutes and 44 seconds. Have a great break. Hey folks, this is John. I hope you're all back. Hopefully you all had a nice break and we are ready to move forward. Okay. So again, we talked about some of the capabilities here. You've got an Explorer that you can use. We got a bunch of pre-built applications, right? In our app catalog that you can use, all that stuff. What if you have to go old school? What if you actually have to build your own dashboard? Well, we're going to show you the capabilities in our new dashboarding tool. Now, just to help me out here a little bit and give me a little frame of reference, how many of you have been using Sumo Logic for more than a year? If you've been using it more than a year, raise your hand, please. Okay, raise your hand. Okay. So, she has. Great. Okay. If you have, then you remember something called our legacy dashboards, or what our dashboards were. And so now we have these new dashboards, or dashboards new. So you and I can click on this new blue button and we can open up a dashboard new. And so here you and I can build a dashboard and build a honeycomb visualization, or a service map visualization, or a map, geographic map visualization, or single value. We can build all this within the dashboard. Again, those of you remember legacy dashboards, I had to build a query first and then take that query into my dashboard. Here we can do it all in one step. And for a while, we weren't real big about promoting these new dashboards because there were still some features that they missed. They weren't there yet, like the auto refresher, live mode, right? We've now added our equivalent of live mode to this dashboard to make it easy. So these are now fully functional dashboards. So what we're going to do here, folks, is we're going to do lab 6, where we're going to create and, of course, share a dashboard that we create. So again, we clicked on the new blue button and we selected dashboard new. Okay. And the first panel that we're going to create is a single value panel. Okay. A single value panel. So under panel, we're going to click on single value. Okay, great. And you'll notice that when you build this, you can either choose to use a log query or a metric query. Now, I don't know how many of you have had metric mastery or familiar with building metrics. So if metrics are an issue, don't worry about it, okay? But we want to make sure that we select metrics. And then you also want to make sure over here with the 3 dots, when you click on it, that it says advanced mode. If it says advanced mode, it means you're in basic mode. And here I can specify the metric I'm looking at, and I can filter it and all that good stuff. If for some reason I am in advanced mode, here I can add a whole metric query. And I don't need to do that in this environment. I can be in basic mode. In fact, I prefer to be in basic mode. So let's click on this. One of the complaints we got about our metric editor was it was too complicated. And you know what? They're right. It was complicated. So we made this new basic mode up where people can pick whatever metric that they want. And they can pick whatever filters that they want. Now, in my case, the metric that I want is this one right here, kube pod info node. And it starts with a colon. So I can start typing in here, colon, KUBE. And you'll notice as I start typing, it starts showing me what one I can use. And this is the one that I want, kube pod info node count. Now I'm not going to filter on anything yet. And I'm going to run this. And when I run this, what I wind up getting back here are 3 results. I'm looking at my kube pod information node count. How many nodes do I have running? Great. I got 3 results. 1 for each of my 3 different environments. My coffee bar training environment's got a node. My mobile banking's got a node. My Prada one's got a node. These also all have node counts. In fact, if I click on chart, it's going to throw an error saying, hey, this is supposed to be a single value. You're giving me 3 values. I don't want 3 values. I want 1 value. Well, let's go back to our directions. Here in my directions, they want me to add a filter where I'm filtering for prod 01 travel collector. So let's go to filter. Let's say underscore collector equals. And notice that when I do this, it shows me my choices. And we want to grab prod 01 travellogic.info. And now when I run this and I'm looking at this data, I'm now down to a single value, a single record here in my table. Now, when I go to my chart, I see a value. I see 7. I am seeing 7 what? 7 nodes. Well, let's change this label down here. So over on the right where it says label, let's change this to nodes. So it becomes a little bit more readable. Also up here in my panel title, I can sit there and talk about my number of nodes running, right? I can put something in there. Oh, and one of the other things we got a complaint about is, gee, it'd be a lot easier if we could fix this up a little bit, right? Make it a little easier to get around. So we simplified this interface. So for example, over here where it says general, if I click on general, here's where my title is, number of nodes running. The font size is 14. Well, let's make the font size a little bit bigger for those of us under the over 50 category. And it made it bigger. I can put a description in here if I want to. I can also link to other dashboards if I want to. Here in my display, again, what do I want to see? My latest data. Maybe I want to see an average of data, whatever. What my label is, my nodes there. I can put some default text in here. Do I want to show my value? Yes or no. It's kind of silly not to show your value, right? Do I want to show the label? Yes, no. Do I want to do some sort of conditional formatting down here, right? So if it's, we'll say, let's say, these are my nodes running and I'm down to 2 or 3 nodes, that might be a bit problematic. So just for fun here, I'm going to say, you know what, if it's 8, and I'll let it go to whatever high number I want, I'll let that go. It's going to show it up as green. If I make it say 4 to 7, now I want that to be yellow, and it will in fact should change it to yellow. Okay, not quite sure why it didn't. And then here, of course, I can say from 0 to 4 or whatever, 0 to 3, and of course, so I can conditionally format my number. Now, why didn't you? I bet you your value is not really 7. I bet your value is like 7 point something. So let's cheat. Let's make this 8. There we go. Okay. All right. So, and I can also decide, do I want to display a sparkline chart? So maybe I do. I want to show a sparkline, which will give me an idea of history of any of the values have changed. And of course, I can change the property and the gauge, colors here. I can show a gauge chart to see what's going on. So making this the way you want it to look is hopefully fairly easy. I think it's fairly easy. Now, I don't believe they asked us to put the gauge on, so I'm going to let that go. And then when I'm done, I can add this to my dashboard. And there you go. And if I want to here, I can adjust it in my dashboard, lay it out. Life is good. So that's step 1 here on page 13 of my single value panel. Additionally, here in step 2, I can create a categorical panel, okay? A categorical panel. So back here, we're going to click add panel. I can actually add my panels right here, my queries right here. And I'm going to grab categorical, okay? And again, I can choose between a log query or a metric query. We're going to choose metric query per the directions. And in my metric query here for my categorical panel, we want to, for our metric, to look at our FluentD output status num errors. So I can go in here and start typing in FluentD. And of course, I've got all kinds of cool stuff, right? All kinds of things that I can use. That's what we want. Fluent D output status. Fluent D. Output status. It was output status number of errors, right? Yep, output status number of errors. Okay, output status number of errors. Okay, cool. Now, unlike a single value unit here, this can have more than one value. And if I look at my preview table here, you see I've got about 999 data points. All right, so lots of stuff here. And what happens is if I get too much data, it will automatically filter for my first 1,000. Okay. So what I can do here is I can also, under my original, under filter, I want to add underscore origin equals Kubernetes. So underscore origin equals Kubernetes, and rerun this. So now I'm down to something less than 1,000. Well, actually, looks like I've still got about 1,000 to go here. It also mentioned here that the requested quantization granularity 5 seconds is not supported. Use 1 minute instead. You may recall on your metrics that there's a retained, if I retain them, if I run them for within 7 days, they can the granularity can be as short as I want it to be. Beyond that, it typically has to either be 1 minute or 1 hour. So they're running in 1 minute increments. We can't go down that low in this time frame. So if I were to change this to a longer time frame, let's go ahead and make it last 24 hours. That one error goes away. Okay. All right. Again, I can pick what collector ID here I want, what application I want, mobile banking, whatever. So if I wanted to go back up here and add another filter, I could do that. But the directions, I believe, want us to add an operator, if memory serves me right. Yeah, we want to add an operator. So we're going to sum by pod. So here in the operator section, and that's where over here, let me click the way here. Here under my add operator, I want to sum. And as I select sum, it says sum by what? Do you want to sum by node, sum by pod? What do you want to sum by? And so I can say I want to sum by pod. So we've tried to make the metric query experience much easier for folks. And so now I'm down to 61 because I've got 61 pods. So each pod is now represented. And now if I click on my chart, I get this lovely pie chart that I can use. Or if you're not at the pie chart, you can make it a column chart or different types of charts here if you want, right? Bubble chart isn't really a good example because you need to have a couple more axes in there. So let's go back to a pie chart. And again, I could, of course, label this pie chart with some value. I could add a legend here if I want to. Actually, it's going to have a built-in legend anyway. So you can basically do that. I believe they want us to select bar and then under statistic type. So I'm going to choose bar chart here. And then under statistic type, they want us to use count. So rather than seeing an average of my things, I want to see the count of my values. And that seems to shoot things out pretty far, like close to 300. And again, I can put in a label here of what it is that I'm building, right? Fluent D output errors. So up here in my titled. Output errors. And of course, I can add this to my dashboard. And again, I can adjust its size. Maybe I'll make it that big, whatever. And that's step 2. Step 3, I can add a time series panel. So again, I'm going to add another panel. It's going to be a time series panel. For my metric, I'm going to use this node disk utilization average in rate. So I'm just going to highlight this and copy it. So again, add panel. This time it wants me to grab a time series. Time series always has time on your x-axis, okay? And again, I'm going to make this a metric query, I believe. Yep, metric query. And I'm going to paste this lovely metric in, and there it is. It found it. And let's go ahead and run it. And I got 103 values back from my different environments. I can put this on a chart. Again, this is my x-axis. That's why this is time series. And of course, here are my y values. Again, I can give this thing a name, right? Average disk utilization rate. So let me copy this. Let me go up here to my entitled, paste that in. So it's got a meaningful name. And that should take care of that. Add to dashboard, and here it is down here. By the way, notice that these all have working panels, right? So I can turn on or turn off my various working panels to see maybe what I want. I'm sorry, the time series does. The other ones may not. My next one here is a text panel where I want to add some specific text, right? And so I can sit there and add a panel, a text panel, where you and I can put things in here. So I may want to put in here information about this dashboard. And I can write down whatever the heck I want in here. Not only can I write down whatever I want, so here, just humor me for a second, whatever I want, okay. We also support Markdown. Markdown is kind of a derivative of HTML. So if I go in here to Markdown syntax, if I want to make it a heading 2 or a heading 1 in HTML, I can add a couple pound signs, okay. So if I go back to this and I type in pound, sorry, the other pound, you'll see it made it a little bit bigger. Single pound made it a lot bigger. A little bit smaller. So you can use those kind of markdown language to adjust whatever you want and whatever you want it to have. Again, I'm going to pick a different color. That's a hideous color. Okay, that's a much better color. Again, I can specify a background color, which by default is white. One thing I've learned, dark colors on light backgrounds are good. Light text on dark backgrounds is good. Light on light is just wrong, hard to read. So if you want an example of what not to do, you can do that. If you're an RGB fan, you can obviously go out here and, do some sort of an RGB code and type in what you want. So you and I can add that text field here and add whatever we want to in this. And that, folks, in a nutshell, is just about that demo. There's one more thing they want us to do. They want us to go ahead and save this, and they want us to share it. So obviously to save it, right, all I have to do, it's actually kind of saving it here for me. By the way, notice we have the ability in these new dashboards to export them as JSON or PDF or PNG files. So you can actually export these. That request is a long time coming, okay? You don't have any people have asked for that. Create stack linking means I can link parts of this dashboard to other dashboards. That's what stack linking is, okay? And then, as I said, I can save this off, give it a name. If I don't specify a name, it'll use a timestamp here like it did. So sorry, I'm from New England. I got to do this. Wicked cool dashboard. Okay. And it's going to put it in my personal folder. There you go. So in my personal folder, I can go in here and I can find my wicked cool dashboard. There it is, my wicked cool dashboard. And of course, I could share it with others through this option. Or in my dashboard, I can click on the share dashboard icon and I can share it with my entire organization, whatever role I want within my organization, or specific named users, right? So just for fun, I'm going to give it to my entire organization. I'm also going to give it to the role that you guys have, which is training analyst. I'm also going to include Odell here. So let's see if I can find Odell. There he is. And so I'll send this to Odell. Now, the reason I'm doing these 3 different groups of things, I wanted to show you that I could, of course, notify them via email, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. And the access I'm giving them right now is they can all view it. They can't change it. They can't change the permissions, but they can view it. But give me a minute. After I click share, I can go back in here again and I can see who has access. And now I can give Odell the ability to not only modify this, which is the edit right, which is what I'm going to give you all, the ability to edit it, make changes to this, except you can't change permissions. And that's the extra permission that I'm going to give Odell. So Odell can manage this. I'm the author. I can manage it. And so there you go. Dashboard's been saved, stood up, made available to others. Pretty cool stuff, right? All right. And that takes care of lab 6. Now, lab 7, we're going to go back in here into Kubernetes and we're going to take a look at some things. We're going to try to troubleshoot a problem. Now, I need to come clean to you. There is a problem with the data that we have in our system right now. So I won't be able to do all of this from inside of the environment. Somebody cleaned out the problem, we injected into it, and he fixed it. And so now I don't see some of the information. So let me kind of walk you through this. And again, I'm going to go into my Sumo Logic environment. I'm going to click New, grab a new Explorer. I'm going to choose Kubernetes namespace view. And I'm going to look at my prod 1 Travel Logic cluster. So again, let me close all these up just to keep things clean. I'm going to grab a new Explorer. Again, it wanted me to make sure I grabbed Kubernetes namespace view. Kubernetes namespace view. They want me here to go into prod 01. Into prod 01, they want me to open it up and they want to expand the prod login namespace. So prod login namespace, there it is. I'm going to expand that up as well. And actually, if I click on it, I see there's a bunch of nifty little things here. I can see my CPU usage. I can see all kinds of other neat things here. I can see that I've got some pods waiting to start, 0 pods that have failed. I can see I've got 2 pods here that are in a crash loopback situation. What is a crash loopback situation? A pod tries to come up and for whatever reason it can't. So it shuts itself down and then it tells itself to come back up and it can't. So it shuts itself down. That is a crash loopback situation. Now, again, in here, I can see all my various pods. These 2 offending pods are my CrowdStrike pod and my Carbon Black pod. Specifically pods associated with this specific host IP, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I could normally go into Sumo Logic and I could take my Carbon Black one here. I could click on it and I can see its state. Now what happens is a state of 1 is good. State of 1 means it came up. It came up and immediately shut itself down. And then it tried to come up again and immediately shut itself down. So I can see I've got some sort of a crash back loop situation here. And what's cool about our dashboards and our Explorer and stuff is that I can click on entities and I can see that this Carbon Black container, there's the pod that I'm specifically looking at, that specific instance, which is part of my deployment of Carbon Black or part of my namespace of prod loggen or part of my cluster. So I can look at this specific entity, or the container, or I can look by its parent object, the pod, or I can look by that parent object, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So in our case, we want to go into the environment here, the parent, the pod. We want to open this up in an entity dashboard. All of our entity dashboards are kind of cross-connected. So I can now go into this specific entity, this specific pod, and I can see information about this pod. I can see its current CPU utilization, its memory, all kinds of stuff. I can see where it's running. I can see, again, CPU versus limitations versus whatever. Again, I've got status indicators here. I can go into my logs. And so normally in this exercise, what I would have you do is we would go into this log, open it up in our log search, and we would try to understand what is happening here, okay? The problem is, like I said, they fixed our errors, okay? So this is not generating any errors. If I go into my messages and I look at all 42 pages, there isn't an error in here. And therefore, it's kind of hard to troubleshoot an error when there is no error, okay? So what we have to do to get through this is we're going to kind of simulate this by going through the labs. So if I went into my logs on page 18 of your guide like you did, open them up, you could then go in here and turn off your messages. And we can do that, right? We can go in, here's our aggregates tab, here's our messages tab, and our messages tab right now is displaying the time. It's displaying our little message, and it's displaying the message, the entire message. And if we turn that off, all we're going to see now is time and our little MSG. Okay. And what would happen is if we went through this and looked through those MSGs, we would see something that says Java IO exception error. You would see a big fat IO exception error with an HTTP status code of 401. Now, many of you who've run Java applications have probably seen an HTTP status code of 401. 401 means we have a problem associated with authentication. So what we want to do is we want to see who the user is that's authenticating. And in our logs, we do catch that user information, the access ID and the access key. So I can take this access ID, I can copy it if I want to, and I can open up a new log search and I can paste in just that access ID. Now you may ask yourself why. This will show me what this access ID is being used throughout all of our logs, all of our systems, all of our things. So here I'm looking at my Kubernetes carbon black environment, carbon black environment, carbon black environment. Great. They open us up for more than 15 minutes. And so I might see other logs, other sources, other things that they've logged into. And this is where, like I said, this lab kind of goes wonky. But if my data was behaving itself like it should, okay, I would notice that there is a particular log message that talks about this log logging in my Kubernetes environment. And then I could see that it's also logging into my lab Sumo Logic environment. And then I could take one of these little messages where the user has been disabled or whatever, and I can expand the message. So let me go back here to my messages here for a second, right? I find a message that piques my curiosity. And I can go and look at messages plus or minus 1 or 5 or whatever minutes surrounding this. And what that would tell me, if I was actually looking at our logs with the right data here, that would show me that a user named Kenneth logged out, and then a user at Shady plus SOC logs in. And then the user at Shady plus SOC deletes the user Kenneth. And then the deleted user Kenneth, that disables their access keys, and therefore this doesn't run under Kenneth's access keys. So most of you are hopefully aware in Sumo Logic, when I use an access ID and an access key, that's the same as my credentials. And so when we try to start something with our credentials, it doesn't work because that user doesn't exist. And so this is just an example of how you can use Sumo Logic for that. And again, I do have to apologize to you in the fact that the data has gotten messed up here in this environment. And we've got requests in to get it fixed, but it's not going to get fixed in the next 30 minutes. So, but that's why we have to kind of go back and do this from this point on as a paperwork exercise, going through this exercise. But I'm sure most of you know from other classes and this class as well, these logs will typically tell you why things are running amok. And you can use this to find out the why. Any questions on that troubleshooting lab? All right, our last lab for tonight is we are going to create an alert. And this is another area where Sumo Logic has made some changes. You may recall in other classes that you could do a save as, and you could schedule up a search, and from that you could kind of sort of create some sort of an alert, okay? Well, that's nice. It's a scheduled alert. It's a scheduled thing, but it's really not, in my mind, an alert. By the way, when we think of alerts, alerts can come in two flavors, right? Somebody could look at a dashboard, monitor that dashboard, and see what is going on, right? So if I close this up, somebody could be looking at this dashboard 24/7 and they see a warning, alert, a problem, and take action on it. But what I'm talking about when I talk about alerts is I'm talking about monitoring. So here in my Sumo Logic environment, here under manage data, there is something called monitoring. And here in monitoring, you and I can create a monitor that we want to see. So the first thing is you and I can create a folder to contain this, right? You've got a Kubernetes environment. Do you want to put all of the different monitors from all of your different systems on the same screen? Or do you want to organize them by your different Kubernetes environments, by AWS environments, by different environments? You can put a folder in there and put these monitors in those respective folders. So you can organize them if you want to in different folders, okay? You can also, if you want to, then go in and create your monitor. When you create your monitor, you get an interface that looks like this. New monitor. Save buttons right there. Do I want to base this monitor based on log data or metric data? Which way do I want to go? I'm going to choose metric data. Per the directions, I am supposed to take this information right there, copy it, and I can paste it basically right in here. Now, again, this is in basic mode, so it's going to try very hard to, okay, it's not going to try very hard. Tell you what, metric is kube pod status. So let's go ahead and type in kube underscore pod underscore pod underscore status, right? Kube pod status. Status phase. There we go. Okay. This is one of those areas where the advanced mode would probably be a little bit more helpful, but that's another story. Tell you what, kube pod status and kube pod status phase. There we go. Good. And then if I want to here, I can say cluster equals star. So I can say cluster equals star, and we all know that that means everything. Give me all the clusters. And I can say sum by cluster. So let's go back out here in my operator. We want to sum by cluster. Okay. So basically what we're doing here is we're writing a query. And that query will then resolve itself and we'll be able to see the results of that query. Now, again, this query could be based on logs. It could be based on metrics. Just waiting for this query to run. Patience is not one of my big virtues. I need to work on that. So this is trying to help me. Oh, good. Try this again. I know why it's going back 3 days. There we go. Let's change that to 3 hours. There we go. There we go. All right. So I can see here that my cube pod status phase, sum here by cluster. Actually, maybe I'll change this to average by cluster. Okay. Because I like, lower numbers. These are sum by cluster. So, but basically what I want to do here is that I want to, when I get my results, I can set some alerts based on the value of my cluster, right? Based on this value here. So again, you define what your query is, and you can see the results of your query here. Then you can say, look, if I'm missing data, I want to set some sort of a trigger. So if I'm missing data, notify me, let me know. If I'm missing data for within 5 minutes or whatever, let me know. Also, the beautiful thing about these monitors is after the problem goes away and life gets back to normal, it can let us know that too. So not only will it tell us when there's a problem, it will tell us when it recovers. Then under warning, I can set a specific warning level. Now, this value is so low, it's probably not a good example here, but I can say, you know what, at 0.1, alert me if I'm greater than 0.1, and that will warn me that we've got problems. Now, in this case, not really the best of example. If I were talking about CPU utilization, disk drive space, things like that, obviously, I'd think about 85%, 90%, whatever, that you want to be warned. And then under the critical tab, I can say, you know what, I've got a problem when things get to 0.2 or whatever that value is that says you got problems. And again, just like with missing data, both warning and critical will not only tell me when I have a problem when this alert occurs, they're also going to tell me when recovery happens, when things get back to normal. And if I want my back to normal the same as my alert setting, I leave the switch the way it is. If I want to have a different value here, I put this switch over to the left and I can change this to a different value, right? So kind of like a difference between a relief valve and a safety, right? A relief valve blows at a certain pressure and resets itself back at that same pressure. A safety valve blows at a pressure and resets itself back at a lower pressure than the relief valve or than the normal valve. So here I can see where I'm at. I can see where my warning and levels and stuff are. Then the next question is, how do you want me to notify you? Do you want me to send you an email? Would you like me to go out to the Datadog environment that you might have and notify you through Datadog? Would you like to notify you through Slack? Would you like to notify you through Microsoft Teams, through webhooks into other systems, PagerDuty, HipChat, other things? How do you want me to notify you? So I'll choose email here. We can all relate to email. Of course, I can type in an email address here, right? Maybe my own, whatever. And then here I can put my subject line and some various dynamic and static text here. I can type in my own custom message. Houston, 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 we have a problem. Okay. And then I say, when does this fire? This fires when I'm missing data and I recover from missing data. This fires when I have a warning level and I recovery from warning level. This fires when I have this. So you pick and choose when you want it to fire. If you want other notifications to do other things, you can obviously do that as well. So you decide what activity you want to take. Then you give this monitor a name. I'm going to go ahead and put in here my my initials. I'm going to type in K8 for the Kubernetes class and type in K8 class. I can put in the description here if I want to. I can even reference certain playbook activity here if I want to. Now, the big thing is, it's funny, you scroll down here, but your save button's up in the upper left-hand corner. But I wish the save button was down here as you finish the process. But I'm going to go ahead and save it. Now, as I save it and I look through here and I look for my message, I can see there it is. And there's its current state. Its current state is normal. And again, I can come back to it and I can see what state it's in. And I can also go in here if I want to, and I can disable it. I can duplicate it. I can export it out as a JSON file so that I can actually bring this in as a JSON file if I want to move it from environment to environment, whatever you want. Or my personal favorite, in my case, I'm going to go ahead and delete it. So it's gone. So that's what Lab 8 is allowing you to do. It's designed to create a lab, or create a alert for you. Now, what questions have you? What questions have you about Kubernetes, about the Explorer, about the applications, about building that new dashboard, about creating an alert? What questions have you? All right, then. Let's get you ready to take your exams. In order to take your exams, you need to log out of our training environment, and you need to log into your company's Sumo Logic environment. So how you log out of our training environment is real simple. You open up this navigation panel, this panel on the left here, by clicking on that hamburger menu or Sumo Logic. Down here in the lower left-hand corner, you will see that you're logged in as training analyst with whatever number. If you click on that, it's going to open up this submenu. And down here is where the sign out option is. You click sign out, poof, you're out of our system. You're out of our training system. You then go to the URL that is your training, your environment within your company. And the reason we want you to do this is real simple. In your training environment, you're logged in as training analyst with some crazy number. That training analyst account's probably passed this exam a time or two before. We want you with your name to get credit for passing this exam, okay? So we want you to log into your company's Sumo Logic environment with your credentials. Oops, sorry. We want you to log in your company's Sumo Logic environment with your credentials, so that when you go in here to the Home tab and you click on Certification tab underneath that, and you click on Get Certified, this will take you to our LMS, our Learning Management System. That's what LMS is. And it has your credentials up here. So up in the upper right-hand corner where it says My Profile, it should have your name, first name, last name, your email address, whatever. You can add a picture if you want to. Maybe a little over the top for some of you, but you could. And by the way, this profile keeps track of all the exams that you've passed. So if you want to go back out here at some point in the future and print out some of your certificates, you can click on View Certificate, send them to the printer, screen capture them, copy and paste a LinkedIn announcement, whatever you want to do. One other little thing I do want to mention to you here with regards to this, and that is you can also click on this to add it to your LinkedIn profile. All that's going to do is add that certification to your LinkedIn certifications and education area. So it's not going to create a new post. It's not going to, do anything crazy like that. Just simply adds it to your certification area. Now, I scroll to the bottom of my profile or your profile or whatever, you'll see there's a done button. we'll click that done button. And again, here under Get Certified is where you and I can find the exam we're looking for. And just to make it easy on yourselves, I suggest you check Kubernetes over here on the left. So it filters and only shows you that Kubernetes exam. Then when you click on it, of course, you got to register. That's an instantaneous process. Congratulations, you're registered. Now, I'm going to walk through this. You don't have to, I don't want you to follow along with me. I just want you to watch. Humor me. There's a before you start section that if I read it over, it says this exam has 30 questions. You're going to have 16 minutes to complete it, right? Gives you the ground rules. Okay, you'll find the exams are presented in many different ways, fill in the blanks, matching text, da-da-da. This is an open book, open note, open instructor exam. You get stuck in a question, ask me, ask Odell. We will gladly help you, okay? And of course, the passing score is 70. Now, when I click next, it's going to take me to the exam. And here in the exam, there's my 60-minute counter. And as I scroll down, eventually, either if I click on start assessment or just scroll down, and I start seeing questions, my timer goes off. So the main difference between the Kubernetes app and the Kubernetes control plane app, right? The Kubernetes app does not monitor the master node while the control plane app does. That looks pretty good to me. The Kubernetes app monitors the master node, which is not true. The control plane does. The Kubernetes app does not monitor. I hate when they say does not, negatives. The worker node, while the Kubernetes control does, that's not true. And then the Kubernetes app monitors pod crash loops while the one does not. So this is the correct answer. I'm going to go with that. You can create key value pairs with label logs for custom metadata. The custom fields in the metadata stream are automatically extracted for searching, querying, and graphing. This allows you to view the results for intuitively referenced subsets, not traditionally tagged as metadata tags. I'm going to guess metadata tags. Now, I'm going to scroll to the end of this. I've only answered 2 questions. And by the way, there's some familiar here that hopefully look very familiar to you, like, some of these dashboards. And you can go in and look at some of these dashboards to see what kind of information they contain for you, okay? But some of these questions are things I talked about: service view, deployment view, node view, again, FluentD, Falco, and all those things, what they do. But I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to say submit my answers. And of course, I failed. No kidding, I failed. Question number 1, I did get right. Question number 2, I got wrong. So I got to check my answer there. But you can see what you got right. You can see what you got wrong. And most importantly, when you're done, click close course so it writes this to your profile. So when you pass this and you cut above a 70 and you passed it and you're very happy, please click close course so it sends it to your profile and updates your profile. Otherwise, if you come back in here again, you may not see your certification that you passed it, okay? Click this close course button if you pass it. If you don't pass it, you got to click the close course button anyway so that you can take the exam again. And you can take it again and again and again as many times as you want or need to. I hope it doesn't come to that. I hope you get it right the first, maybe the second time. What questions have you about the exams? Be ready to play. Now, if you don't want to take the exam, you don't have to, but I would encourage you to do so. You've already spent the time. We're here to answer your questions. Please take advantage of that. Otherwise, on behalf of myself and Odell and everybody at Sumo, we want to thank you for attending. Appreciate you spending the time with us. And if there's anything we can do to help you going forward, please don't hesitate to reach out. Please be safe. Have yourself a wonderful Easter weekend. And look forward to seeing you in class again real soon. Again, feel free to stay and do the exam. If you need to sign out, whatever you need to do. We're here. Odell and I will be here until you guys are all finished up. Odell, anything you want to answer?
No, sir. Thank you, everyone, and good luck.
Yeah. Somebody asked about the link for the voucher. We're going to paste that in the chat. I bet you Odell does it before I do, but we'll get it, put it in the chat box here in a second. Let me go ahead and stop the recording. Thank you, Odell. See, I told you he's good.